And I'll obviously spare you the time because this is tedious. So you won't need to do all of this yourself. You should have access to all of this. But in any case, I've added all of this. Now, if I save this, you'll see that we have more movies, at least enough to cover our user interface. So if you click, it goes and gets the avatar. So everything is still working as expected. But as you know, the one thing we're all passing is just the titles. We obviously need a better way to pass data. In this case, we are going to be passing the whole object onto the next route, or the second route here, because we're going to create a details page. So now that we have the data and we know how things are actually working, it's just a matter of creating our user interface and start adding the data for our details route. So let's go ahead and fine tune our app. For that, we're going to create another property here, a movie type property. I'm going to call this movie, like this. Let's make this final. And we're going to have a problem because we need to initialize our movie type. So we're going to just go ahead and add final field as a parameter here, and there we go. Now everything still works fine because remember, all these parameters we're passing are optional, so you can see things are still working fine. But now we have the option of course, passing. If you come down here, we can pass a movie, and you can see there's a name parameter there. And how do we get the movie object? Well, what is a movie object? Well, a movie object is anything that is inside of our array or list, right? So this here, up till here, would be a movie object. That's why we're able to invoke the dot operator and get the title property of a movie object, right? So I can copy that and pass here as our movie object. Once we have our movie object being passed in our navigator material page route, we can now access from our movie, because we are passing inside of our constructor here, we can use it inside of our page or route. What I mean by that is, I'll give an example. I can say this, that movie now, instead of movie name string, I can say dot, and voila. You can see I have all of these properties that I can access. Okay, so I can get director. Let's start getting director so you can see the difference. Save this. Let's go ahead and run. All right, everything is still good. Let's click, and voila, it's giving us the director of each of these movies. In fact, if we go to a different one, this Power, not available, there's no director. Vikings, not available also. Let's see, Game of Thrones, also not available. All of that is actually coming from our data. So Christopher Nolan, that is for our movie. Was that Wall Street? No, that was Interstellar. All right. Good. So it's working, right? Because we're able now to invoke our movie object because we're passing that when we push using navigator, and we have material page route there. We can still pass the movie name as we've been doing, although that's not necessary at this point, but we can leave as that or remove this altogether. It should still work. Let's go ahead and add an image instead of this H there, so we can start putting together a fairly decent user interface. We've done that before. We know that if we go to our movie, we do have this image array or list at the bottom, but that's not what we're interested in at this point. What we're interested in is to get this image here. Okay, this is the URL which will give us the actual image. Well, as a property, we can access that. What we want to do inside of our circle avatar, inside of our container here, we can actually pass an image property. Now this image property, let's start again, you can see what it expects. Because it's inside of a box decoration, it wants a decoration image as well, type. So I'm going to say decoration image as that. And now we'll have to pass a few properties. First of all, the image property, that's what we need to pass. I'm going to say network image because we're going to get that from a URL. And I'm going to pass the URL. Now, how do we get that URL, which is this property there? Well, very simply, I can go through our movie list and I'm going to get through our index. Okay. And I'm going to get the poster because poster, it is indeed the URL. If we go back to our movie here, let's go to instantiation. You can see we do have poster, which is a string. If we look at the actual payload, poster has this URL, which is our JPEG. Next, what we're going to do, we're going to make sure that it's box fit cover like this. And if we want it, we can make this a little bit bigger. Say width about 200 and height also about 200. Let's see if that's going to help a little bit. So let's go and make sure that this link is actually working. So essentially, we're trying to get these links to show us some images. Let's copy this and paste it in on the browser because it's just a link. All right, so you can see we have issues here. This is a link that we're receiving. This is what's happening here. It looks like we have some issues connecting and getting the actual image, right? So this is what we get from using APIs, from using JSON files that we find online, okay? No problem, we can always fix our issues here by simply changing this poster here to get something else. So what I mean by that is that we have another way to get other images. Hopefully they will also work. We can go ahead into our images and get either one of these, right? So get the first one. Notice also that is a list, so we can get the first, second, third, or fourth, depending on how many we have. Okay, it seems like all of them at least have 3 images in our images. So that should be helpful. So instead of a poster, we're going to go straight to images. There it is, it's going to be a list. And let's just go get the first one. Save this. And voila, you can see now we have our images. They're showing, they're very small, but still we see that we're getting the images pertaining to the movie. So that's very helpful. Let's make them a little bigger and get rid of this text here. In fact, I can just altogether either go ahead and pass a null. That way there's no text on top again. And we can see those images. Of course, you click, things are still happening. So we're making really good progress.